أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرفهم أجمعين، حبيبنا وطبيبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: إن لقتل الحسين حرارة في قلوب المؤمنين لن تبرد أبدا. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yet another day has passed in this first Ashra of Muharram al-Haram. Yet another day has passed of sensing a growing feeling of grief and unease and harara and passion in ourselves as we move towards the climax of Ashura, inshallah. May Allah increase our grief day by day, night by night, and may He reward us immensely for our grief and for our service, inshallah, in the cause of Hussein. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam moved to Makkah from Medina, he stayed for about 4 months in Makkah before carrying on forward to Kufa. During this time, this stay of about 4 months in Makkah, you had Muslims, Hujjaj, Zuwar from around the Muslim world coming to Makkah. Makkah is after all, was a center of pilgrimage at that time and still is today, and rightly so. They would come and they would worship in Masjidul Haram, they would do tawaf of the Holy Kaaba, and then they would meet Hussein. They would hear that the grandson of the Prophet is here. Of course, they love the Prophet. They love Rasulullah, they love his family, even though they may not have the required ma'rifah to follow him. But they love him, they like him. So they would rush over to meet Hussein, and Hussein would tell them, I am here to announce my rejection of Yazid. I am here to announce the start of a new phase in the Islamic civilizational mission, a new phase of open rejection of the usurping ruler and authority. And these Muslims would be mesmerized by Hussein's beauty, by his eloquence, by his purity. The noor of wilaya would hardly leave any Muslim untouched. And then they would go back to their cities. Most of them would go back to their hometowns and carry the word with them. Hussein has refused to accept Yazid. And this word would spread all over the Muslim lands and therefore prepare Muslim society and Muslim civilization for further progress in the coming years. While he's at Makkah, Hazrat Muslim's letter arrives from Kufa. the letter which says, "Dear brother, you sent me as your messenger. I have been in Kufa for a few days now. The Kufans are sincere. The Kufans are true to their promise and their oath. They will support us. Please come to Kufa immediately." He's received this letter now. He's in Makkah. And now he's getting ready to leave Makkah. He's getting ready to leave Makkah for Kufa. The night before he departs from Makkah for Kufa, Imam Hussain alayhi salam gathers his companions, and it appears that there were many. It was a kind of an open gathering, a public gathering. This is at a time when Makkah is crowded beyond belief. It is just a couple of days till Eid, the peak and climax of Hajj, Eid-e-Qurban. And he holds a public gathering, a meeting, and he delivers a short but very powerful speech, which has been recorded. In that, he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He talks about the importance of the family of Rasulullah. He talks about the importance of giving everything for Islam. And then, towards the end of this short but very powerful khutbah speech, he makes and announces an open invitation for anyone who wishes to join him, to join him. And he ends with this line. He says, فَإِنِّي رَاحِلٌ مُصْبِحًا inshallah. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'm going to set off tomorrow morning. An open invitation. Anybody who wishes to come with me can come with me. And it is such an open invitation. It is so wide open, dear brothers and sisters, that this invitation speaks to you and me as well. It isn't limited to the few hundred people who may have gathered around him at that time to listen to him speak. It isn't limited to the Muslims of his time alone. It speaks to everyone. It's addressed to everyone, including all of us. I know this may be a little difficult to swallow. It sounds like hyperbole, exaggeration. But let me give you just another example to establish that Imam Hussain had his eye on each one of us as well, and on all the other Muslims, and perhaps even many non-Muslims as well, including in our time. I mentioned that when he was leaving from Medina, I'm going back a few months, when he was leaving from Medina, his half-brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, came to meet him, see him off, and they had a conversation. And it was in that context and in the context of that meeting that I narrated that sentence, Inni la makhruj asharan wala batara wala mufsidan wala dhalima. And the most important part, Innama kharajtu li talabil islah fi ummati jaddi. The only reason that I am setting out, the only reason why I am rebelling against this authority is to seek reformation in my grandfather's ummah. You remember this. But there's a very interesting detail to this conversation. This conversation is between two brothers. They are sitting face to face and talking to each other. But when it comes to this sentence, Imam Hussain asks for pen and paper to be brought. That's what the narration says. And it is in writing that he puts down this sentence. And he leaves it with his brother. Now tell me, dear brothers, dear sisters, if I am having a personal conversation with somebody and I'm explaining something to him, will I write it down and give it to him? Will I send him a WhatsApp message if he's sitting right in front of me? It makes no sense. The only way this makes sense is if I want that message to linger, to stay on, and to reach other people. And that's what Imam Hussain does. He writes down these few sentences in what seems to be a private conversation between two brothers. And this has stayed, it has been recorded, and it has come to us and many others over the centuries, and it has affected us and changed us, and inshallah someday will transform us. So he's giving this open invitation for all of us to join, all of us as well to join him in his mission. But, dear brothers and sisters, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to think that we've got this invitation. It's open for all of us, everybody. But it's an open invitation that is also conditional. Now, this may sound contradictory. How can an invitation be both open and conditional? Sounds contradictory? Of course it does. But when we will look at the words that he has used, inshallah, in a few moments, we will get a sense of what I am trying to say. In this short khutbah, the ending and the closing, where he makes this open invitation, he says, Man kana badilan fina muhjatahu muwattinan ala liqa'illahi nafsahu falyarhal ma'na fa inni rahilun musbihan, inshallah. He says, whoever is ready to sacrifice his most precious possessions, whoever is ready to sacrifice the core of his existence for us, Ahl Bayt, whoever is ready and focused upon meeting his Lord, فَلْيَرْحَلْ مَعَنَا, he should set off with us. He should set off with us. And I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Dear brothers and sisters, the contradiction can be resolved. It is both open and conditional. It is open to everyone, as long as everyone or whoever is willing to meet these conditions. And these conditions are conditions that can be met and achieved, as we will discuss a little more. For example, if I were to make an invitation, whoever is male can come with me, for example, on a journey. Now, this is a condition that not all human beings can meet. Obviously, only a part of humanity is male. Similarly, whoever belongs to this family, this tribe, this nationality, this language can come with me. These are conditions that are restrictive, because at the end of the day, not everybody can be a part of the same tribe or family. But when we are given conditions that pertain to our soul, our niyyah, the actions of the soul, they are conditions that are open, because everybody is free to make the right decision and choice, and we will see that in a minute. So we see that if we seek to be with Hussein, and all of us seek to be with Hussein, and that's why all of us are here, for no other reason. Fundamentally, we are here because we seek to be with Hussein. If we seek to be with Hussein, and if we seek and wish to answer his call and his open invitation, we are already starting to get a sense that we need to do something. There are some things that need to be done, some barriers that need to be overcome, perhaps. And if we are able to identify these barriers and overcome them, then we will be able to proceed with Imam Hussein on his mission in our lives as well. And there isn't much time. He's leaving tomorrow morning, as he said. We looked at one of the barriers last night, very briefly. We spoke of sin, disobedience of Allah's command, His commands, as being one of the barriers. Imam Hussein is the center of purity, of obedience to Allah. Obviously, if we want to be close to Him, we will need to put some distance between us and sin and between us and disobedience. We saw that yesterday. We saw that interesting story about Rasul Turk, if you remember. And we saw the enormous transformational potential of Azadari itself. When Rasul Turk realizes that Imam Hussein cares for him, we saw that last time, I'm just referring to it very briefly. When he realized that Imam Hussein cares for him, he is transformed. All of us can feel that Imam Hussein cares for us. If he did not care for us, we would not be here right now. We would not be here right now. And we can sense this enormous transformational power. If Hussein cares for me, how can I possibly disobey him? How can I possibly disobey his Lord, our Lord? Just doesn't make sense to me, to any of us. And Alhamdulillah, if we pay attention to this culture of Azadari, this culture of Aza, this Husseini culture, Husseinism, and these morning gatherings are an important manifestation of Husseini culture. But I would like to just point out that Husseini culture is not limited to these gatherings. These gatherings are a very important part of that culture, a very important manifestation, but this culture has the power to grow and encompass every aspect of our lives. And inshallah, we'll touch upon that in a few minutes. This Husseini culture and this important manifestation, these gatherings, these morning ceremonies, these gatherings of Aza, they themselves are so well designed to bring about change in us. Tell me, dear brothers and sisters, in these gatherings, it is so easy to be good and so difficult to be bad and sinful here. For example, in these gatherings, it is so easy to be polite and courteous to each other. You see, everybody is polite and courteous, giving space to each other, making sure that everyone's comfortable, passing food around. Outside, it may not be so easy to be so considerate and caring of each other. Here, it is easy to be considerate and caring and difficult to be rude and selfish. It is easy to think collectively here. In the outside world, often it's easy to think individualistically and selfishly. For example, on nights when there are more people, we see immediately people squeezing to sit together, give space. People bring their children here, they feel comfortable. The kids make some noise. Most people ignore it, or they very kindly and politely request the families and mothers to take better care of their children. It's all pleasant. Outside in our daily lives, some of us find it difficult to appear Muslim, to dress in the way Muslims befits a Muslim. I'm talking about both men and women. Here, it is difficult to do the other thing, the opposite. It is easy here, in fact, to dress like a Muslim and be a Muslim and appear Muslim as well. And difficult to do it, the opposite becomes difficult here. So, dear brothers and sisters, these gatherings play an important role in training and developing and nurturing this Husseini culture among us. And helps us overcome that barrier, that challenge, that prevents us from being with Hussein, the barrier called sin. And there are various kinds of sins. Today, let's take our conversation a little forward. And let's speak of another challenge, perhaps a barrier that needs to be overcome so that that open yet conditional invitation can be answered with a resounding labbaik ya Hussein. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لبيك يا حسين يا علي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. As we move into this, let's move in with a short story that most of you are familiar with. And that's one of the very interesting aspects of these gatherings of Azza. And most of the things here that we listen and we encounter are very familiar. But it's amazing, they seem fresh and new every time that we come across them. It is the same Masai, for example, Musibah, that we cry over year after year. The same Noha that invokes passion and change in us. It's one of the interesting aspects, some would say mysteries of these gatherings. There was a man, you've heard his name. His name is Ubaidullah ibn Hur al-Jofi. You've heard the incident probably. As Imam Hussain alayhi salam was heading towards Kufa, on the way he received news of Hazrat Muslim's Shahada. Yet he and his companions decide to proceed towards Kufa. As they get closer to Kufa, they encounter a person camping near them on that journey, but he was coming from the opposite direction, from Kufa. So they ask who he is, they ask about him, and they are told that this is the camp, the little camp of a man called Ubaidullah ibn Hur al-Jofi. He has no connection with the Hur that we spoke of a few days back. It's just a coincidence that their names have Hur in them. There's no relationship. You know the story? Imam Hussain first invites him to come over and meet him, to join him. He refuses. Then Imam Hussain goes over to meet Ubaidullah himself. What an honor. He comes to meet him. He explains his mission to him. Ubaidullah says, I know about your mission. I'm from Kufa. I am among those people who sent those letters to you and invited you to Kufa. Imam Hussain says, all right then, join us. Let's go on to Kufa together. He says, no, I can't do that. Some may be under the impression that the problem with Ubaidullah was that he lost his nerve, he got scared. But that seems unlikely, dear brothers and sisters, because Ubaidullah, if you go back into the historical record regarding him, he is a famous warrior and military commander. Engaging in battle is something he's used to. So it's difficult to believe and accept that fear of battle and bloodshed is what caused him to take this stand and this approach. It seems, dear brothers and sisters, there was another problem. And we can get a sense of that when we read their conversation, Imam Hussein's conversation with Ubaidullah. The justification that Ubaidullah offers to Imam Hussain for refusing to join Imam Hussain, despite knowing everything about his mission, despite knowing that Imam Hussain is on the right path and everything, he says, the situation in Kufa is very bad. Things are very difficult. Things are very difficult. The situation is very difficult. I don't have the energy to do this with you. Dear brothers and sisters, I think what this incident, this conversation points to is a barrier which we can perhaps name or call lack of ambition. Lack of ambition. It is not fear of warfare that bothers or which is holding Ubaidullah back. It is the problem of seeing the current situation and its difficulties and then not being able to dream and imagine big as a result of it. The present situation is very bad. It is, of course. Kufa has stepped back, is no longer as supportive of Imam Hussein as it was supposed to be. Imam Hussein has just got a small group of followers with him. This causes Ubaidullah to reject Imam Hussein's direct face-to-face invitation. This lack of ambition, this fear not of battle, fear of failure, this being overly affected by the problems of the present situation and therefore being unable to dream big. That's what's holding Ubaidullah back. And so he says, Imam Hussein, you've heard this before. I've got a great horse. I've got this sword. I've got this. Take everything, anything that you want. And what does Imam Hussein say in reply? You heard this as well. He says, Ma ji'naka li farasika aw li sayfika. We haven't come to you for your horse. We haven't come to you for your sword. He goes on to say,
Salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and wa ala Muhammad. Apologies, Aga. May I please request the men to move forward, please? Please move forward. The sisters do not have space at the back. Please kindly move forward. Stand up and move forward. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and wa ala Muhammad. Wajil for him. Especially those brothers at the back. Please kindly move forward. Thank you. Yes, please kindly move forward. There's a lot of space in the front, inshallah. You can
please
also
come
get
forward.
Jazakallah. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Salawat.
Please. Thank you.
Allahumma salli ala wa ala Muhammad. Thank you, Aga.
You're welcome. Thank you. Ma ji'nak li farasika aw li sayfik. We haven't come here for your horse and your sword. In bakhilta lana binafsika فَلَا حَاجَةَ لَنَا بِشَيْءٍ مِّن مَالِكَ. If you're going to be miserly, please pay attention to this. If you're going to be miserly when it comes to your soul and giving of yourself to us, we don't need anything from your property. Imam Hussein is willing to accept from our property. Please pay attention to this point. He is not rejecting that which we may offer from our mal in all cases. He's saying, if you have not offered your nafs and yourself for us, in that case, I do not want anything from your property. Once we have offered up our entire existence to Imam Hussein, our property, all of it can be easily given away for Imam Hussein and he will accept it. But if we refuse to offer ourselves to Imam Hussein, the core of our existence, La hajata lana li shay'in min malik. This lack of ambition, this being overly affected by the problems and the weaknesses of the present times and not being able to imagine big. Imam Hussein is all about, and his movement is all about imagining big. Imam Hussein is setting off from Medina. He says, Islahe ummate jaddi. Not only is he on a man on a mission, he's an extremely ambitious man, Imam Hussein. Extremely ambitious. Yazid is in power. Hussein, you have no followers, you have no army. The Kufans, they invited you, but now look. But he says, Islahi ummati jaddi. Ambition. Ambition, dear brothers and sisters, is extremely bold in the Husseini camp, in the Husseini mission, in the Husseini culture. And just as tawbah and repentance transforms, ambition transforms. Those of us, those Muslims, non-Muslims, Perhaps they could even be Shia. But those who are not so involved with Husseini culture, not so immersed in Husseini culture, when we ask them about their ambition, when we ask them, there are young people, this is an important question, especially for younger people. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What is your ambition? We may sometimes encounter answers such as these from people who are not so immersed in Husseini culture. They may say, for example, in the material dimension of ambition, they may say, oh, I just want a good job. They may say, I want a job that allows me to buy this, and pay these installments, for example. I want to be able to pay off this loan. That's what I want. Or if they are a little bolder, they may say, I want to do something so I can retire by 40. Retire by 40. Everyone's heard this? Retire by 35? That's even better. Okay? Have some kind of property, whatever income, so I don't have to work. And sometimes I'm left wondering whether this person has understood my question. I asked him about his ambition, what he wants to do, but he's telling me what he doesn't want to do. He wants to stop working. He doesn't want to work beyond a point. It seems the question has not been understood. The meaning of ambition seems to be lost. I don't want to work beyond a point. This is my ambition. We have so many ahadith of this kind, for example, that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, when he was shaking hands with a mu'min, a Muslim, and he noticed that his hands were all knotted. Somebody used to work with his hands. Maybe he was a farmer, a potter, whatever. He did musafiha, he held his hands, and then when he noticed that his hands are very rough, Rasulullah picked up these hands and kissed them. قَبَّلَ يَدَهُ وَقَالَ إِنَّهَا لَا تَمَسُّهَا النَّارِ. These hands, this hand, hellfire will never touch them. I haven't seen any ahadith where Rasulullah embraced somebody for having retired at 35 or 40. Praised him for this. It seems the meaning of ambition seems to have been lost. We ask about ambition, people tell about the answer about their lack of ambition. Well, in this maktab, in this Husseini mission, the ambition is of a scale that our lifespans and lifetimes are not enough to contain our ambition. They are not enough to contain our ambition. Even when it comes to the material dimension, our ambition is enormous because it is linked to the Husseini mission. And of course, when it comes to the spiritual, Maulana, objection. Isn't having a large material ambition a problem? Doesn't Islam teach us that we need to have an otherworldly focus? Doesn't it tell us we should not be materialistic? And here you are, sitting on the mimbar of Rasul and asking us to have huge material ambition, make a lot of money, earn a lot of wealth, be powerful in our material spheres? It's a good question. Alhamdulillah, we have a hadith from our fifth Imam, Hazrat Muhammad Baqir, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which can perhaps, because we don't have time to get into details, just very briefly perhaps answer this question. He says, Inni la abghadu li rajulin an yakuna kaslanan an amre dunya. He says, I hate it. I dislike it intensely. Whenever I see a man lacking motivation, ambition, energy when it comes to his worldly affairs. And then he goes on to explain why. He says, Man kana kaslanan an amre dunya. Whoever is lazy, lacks motivation in his worldly affairs, fahuwa an amre akhiratihi aksal. When it comes to his other worldly affairs, his akhirah, he will be even worse, lazier, and even weaker when it comes to motivation. And this is not difficult to understand. In this dunya, the results and rewards of our efforts in the material field are usually achievable and attainable in a short period of time. We work hard, we study hard. Of course, study should not be focused only on employment, but to a certain degree it is. We study hard, we get a better job. We work harder at our jobs, we'll get promoted, we'll get an increment. At our businesses, we work hard, we'll earn more money, our business will grow further. If a person is not motivated enough to acquire rewards which are easily attainable, achievable, and verifiable, how can we expect him to work hard for something which may be visible to him and given to him only after his death? Many spiritual rewards, not all of them of course, many spiritual rewards are attainable only in the afterlife. And of course, when we are talking about being materially ambitious, I don't need to say this in this gathering, but let me say it just in case it's getting recorded and telecast. Obviously, being materially ambitious means being materially ambitious within the daira and the limits of the Sharia, keeping halal and haram in mind. Of course, that goes without saying. We are a gathering of mu'mineen. I don't need to say this. Ambition is extremely important in the Hussaini Maktab. Ambition is extremely important. And the lack of ambition leads us to reject, may lead us to reject the invitation of our Imam, even if he were to come to see us and invite us to join him, as happened with Ubaidullah, as happened to Ubaidullah. When ambition in our maktab, in fact, as I said, in the Hussaini maktab, in a Hussaini's life, his lifespan isn't enough to contain his ambition. Islah-e-Ummat-e-Jaddi began back then. Imam Hussain continues to do it now through us. His ambition was Islah-e-Ummat. It couldn't be contained in his lifespan. And it's just not Imam Hussain himself. Those who follow this maktab have this feature. Let me end with a striking little story from about 40 years ago. About 40 years ago, there was a young man, and once again, this is from Iran, the story. And he was an ordinary young man, not very educated initially. He was a tailor. He used to struggle to get by with his work. Then eventually, he was inspired to acquire religious knowledge. He entered the Hawza, acquired religious knowledge, and became an Islamic scholar of some stature. And then, of course, however, times were difficult before the revolution, after the revolution, etc. He continued to have a very hard material life with his family, of course. There are many very interesting examples of a very striking personality that he had, many important things that he did. I'll just mention one of them. For example, when he had saved a lot of money, not a lot of money, when he had saved some money after a lot of time, struggling, he was able to buy a house. He was able to buy a house for his family. He bought this house, and a few days later, he told his family, I'm selling it. His family was obviously surprised. We've just bought it. We've barely settled in. Why are you selling this house? He said, I know of 2 other families who are in a very difficult situation. They are not even able to pay their rent. I'm going to sell this house and we are going to buy 3 small houses in a poorer part of the city. We'll stay in one and those 2 families will stay in another. Now look at the ambition of this man. With a small sum of money, he was able to dream big, and instead of providing housing just to 1 family, he was able to provide housing for 3 families with that small sum of money. Anyway, he then, when that war is imposed upon Iran by the Iraqi government of that time, and it lasts for 8 years, he is one of the martyrs in that war. And of course, his family is deeply grieved by it. It is those days just after his martyrdom that there are mourning ceremonies being held in his hometown, in his wife's hometown, and the family is all traveling from one place to the other. And it so happens that his children are in the city of Qom, where he was based at that time. And of course, he's passed away. His wife, that is the mother of the children, is away at her own hometown. The neighbors are taking care of the kids for a night. His little girl comes home with a piece of paper, which is an examination timetable. It's time for exams. The school at that time, they had this method. They used to send the examination timetable home. And one of the parents had to sign on that timetable to say that I have seen it. I know about the exams, and that needs to be carried back. Now, this little girl, very young child, she was so worried about this, it seemed to worry her more than the death of her father, because there's nobody at home to sign. Her father has passed away, her mother's away. And she's all worried about this. And while she's worried, she goes to sleep, worrying about what's going to happen the next day. When she's sleeping, she sees her father. His name is Syed Mujtaba Salehi Khansari. That's his name. You can look it up later. It's available on the internet in great detail. Syed Mujtaba Salehi Khansari appears in his daughter's dream, and they have a long conversation. And at the end of it, he asks her, why are you so worried? So she tells him in that dream that, Baba, there is this paper that has to be signed. He says, no problem, I'll sign it. And he signs it in that dream. The next morning when this child wakes up, she realizes, oh, it's a dream. And she starts getting ready to go to school. When she picks up that piece of paper and is about to put it in a bag, she notices that it has been signed by her father. She runs to her elder sister and says, this has happened. Now, the older kids, of course, they say that, look, you're imagining things. But she insists. They look at the signature. It's exactly like the father's signature. They say that even if it's been forged, this kid can't forge it. And there begins a long process of verification and checking and so on and so forth. Till finally, it is declared by checking with his signature in other places, etc., that this is not a forgery. And the ink that has been used for that signature is made up of elements, some of which could not be identified. The original paper is now inside the Musée Shohada, the Martyrs Museum in the city of Tehran. You can go and have a look. It's in a glass case. And this story is well known among the children and the Mu'mineen of Iran. The ambition, the effect of somebody in the Husseini mission is not limited to their lifespan. They are able to reach out beyond their lives. They're able to make changes and affect changes, be it in their families or on a larger scale in society. That's why we've been told that don't even imagine, don't even think. لا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا. Don't even imagine for a moment that those who are killed in the way of Allah are dead. بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. They are alive. They are alive, constantly getting sustenance in the presence of their Lord. When we come to ambition, dear brothers and sisters, ambition reaches its peak in Karbala. Ambition comes to life in Karbala. It is the Shab and the night preceding Ashur. And if we travel to Karbala, perhaps we may see a scene such as this. In those days, dear brothers and sisters, there was a method, something that used to happen. When battles used to be fought at a specific geographic location in those days. Two armies would physically arrive at one place and fight a battle. It was common that on the day before or the night before the battle, each army's commander would line up his forces. They would stand in battle formation and he would inspect them. He would walk among those troops, a word of encouragement here, a suggestion here, spots a weakness there, tries to fix it, etc., etc. That's part of his job. And this kind of gathering also helped instilled a greater sense of camaraderie as well as self-confidence in those troops as they're getting ready to join battle on the following day. So perhaps we can imagine that when we are in Karbala on the night preceding Ashura, perhaps the commander of Hussein's army, that is Hussein himself, perhaps he may have done something similar. But of course, his army is a small army in numbers. It is thirsty, it is hungry, and surprisingly, it includes a lot of women and children as well. And therefore, it is easy to imagine that he would be walking through the tents that night, observing. Perhaps there was somebody praying there. Perhaps somebody was sitting and preparing his weapons there. Perhaps as he passed by a certain tent, he may have overheard a lady telling her child, "O Qasim, when you join battle tomorrow, make sure that you set an example. You are Imam Hassan's representative here. Don't let anyone say that you were not faithful to your uncle." Perhaps when Imam Hussein hears this, he may have said in his heart, "Oh, my respected sister-in-law, you don't need to worry. Qasim is going to set a shining example, and we'll talk about that in the coming nights." Perhaps in another tent, he may have heard another lady talking to her child saying this, "Oh Ali Asghar, I wish you were grown up. If you were grown up, you could have helped your father. But unfortunately, you're such a tiny baby, you can't do anything." And if this was overheard by Imam Hussein, I'm sure he would have said in his heart, "Oh Rabab, worry not. Our Ali Asghar is going to set the battlefield afire tomorrow. The greatest warriors will tremble and quake when he comes to battle. Don't worry." But of course, this will be taken up another night. In yet another tent, we have Aqilatu Bani Hashim, Sayyida Zainab. And she is talking to her children, to Aun and to Muhammad ibn Abdullah. She's talking to them. And she's telling them, look, my dear sons, make sure you speak to your uncle Abbas about how to attack. He's very well trained in the arts of war. You don't have much experience. Ask him how it's done. Make sure that you fight in such a way that the enemy, before he knows your name, is forced to call out, "The blood of Ali runs in the veins of these boys. Go out and fight." And that's what the children do the following day. And she's also telling them, look, if your uncle, if my brother Hussein hesitates to give you permission, take the name of my mother Fatima and tell him that Fatima's daughter Zainab wants her sons to go to war. He won't be able to say no after that. He won't be able to say no after that. They get permission and they head out for battle. Dear mourners, dear brothers and sisters, they head out for battle. They head out for battle, and the ladies, the children, we can imagine them standing at the door of their tents, looking intensely towards the battlefield, observing what's happening. But it is narrated that Sayyida Zainab herself was inside the tent on the prayer mat. She wasn't observing the battle. She was praying intensely, fervently for success. And of course, success in the Husseini camp is very different from the understanding of success in the other camp. She's praying. She's concentrating. But her concentration is broken, they say, when word reaches her that her sons, while battling, while attacking, while sidestepping, they have come close to the river of Furat. They have come close to the river. Word reaches her. At this point, they say, she gets flustered. She calls out to Abbas and says, "Oh, my brother, my children are thirsty and I hear that they are near the river. Please send somebody to them with my message. Tell them you may be thirsty, you may be near the river, but my brother Hussein is also thirsty. Sakina is thirsty. Don't forget that. Don't forget that." Her sons engage in battle, but the inevitable happens. In no time, Imam Hussein, Hazrat Abbas are seen carrying the bodies of these two young martyrs back towards the tent. When they come back towards the tent, the children, the women, they gather around these two bodies, these martyrs. They gather around Imam Hussein. They are crying, they are wailing, they are beating their chests, they are hugging each other as these two young boys are brought back. But people look around, the ladies look around, and they see that the mother is in there. Sayyida Zainab is in there. Somebody goes inside the tent and they see her in prostration. Allahumma taqabbal minna hadha al-qurba. Oh Allah, please accept this sacrifice from us. The ladies tell her, "Zainab, you must come outside. They are your sons. You must come outside." She says, "No, I won't come." "Zainab, you must come. You are their mother. The mother must be there. See the bodies." She says, "No, I will not come because I am their mother." They say, "What does that mean?" "I am their mother. I fear that if I see their bodies, I will not be able to control myself. I may lose my composure. And this may cause my brother to feel embarrassed. This may cause my imam to feel guilty and ashamed in front of me. I am not willing to be the cause of any discomfort for Hussein. I will stay here inside the tent." Oh Sayyida Zainab, you are so concerned about your brother, about your imam. You don't want to cause any pain or discomfort. You don't want to see him in any kind of pain. But what will you do? It's just an hour or two away, Sayyida Zainab, that your brother, the imam, will be showered with arrows, showered with stones. He will fall on the dusty plains of Karbala, and you will be watching as Shim steps up with his dagger towards Hussein. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim. Sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun barilaha. Oh Lord, please accept this ibadah from us. Oh Lord, please solve the problems of all the mu'mineen and the lovers of Hussein who are present here today. In particular, there is a brother who came up and has requested a special dua for his problems. May Allah solve his problems and the problems of all the lovers of Hussein tonight itself. May Allah help us understand our duties and our mission in the Husseini camp. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.